Okay, today's little video is about evolution. Love evolution. So, what do I want to say about evolution? I think the first thing to say is that it is not a theory as in a little idea that somebody came up with. It is a theory that has got so much evidence to back it up that it is irrefutable, even, and I must stress this, if you are Donald Trump watching this. So, what you all know about the theory of evolution is that it was put forward by Darwin, and I think the thing that everybody knows is he went to the Galapagos Islands and then he kind of came up with this idea. Well, it's absolute nonsense. He spent years and years of his life studying a huge variety of organisms, talking to people who bred pigeons. He's done this sort of treatise on fossil cockles of all things, and barnacles. Spent a long time studying barnacles. He had quite a boring life, really. And in his youth, he had gone to the Galapagos Islands and he had killed a number of organisms and sent them back to the Natural History Museum, where you can still see some of his specimens. So he had a huge amount of evidence upon which to base his conclusions. So these are the things that sort of in his lifetime, while he was thinking about species, that he noticed and the conclusions that he came to. And I think if you'd spent that amount of time studying stuff and you had noticed the things that he had noticed, you would definitely come to the same conclusion if you thought about it. And all you need to do is think about it and make it part of yourself. Okay. So, what did Darwin notice? First of all, he noticed that all organisms overproduce offspring. And so, your average mallard duck will lay 24 eggs. And okay, some of them might not hatch, but you've all seen, or, if not, go to Heaton Park and have a look at the duck pond. In spring, mother ducks, and they've got a big trail of sort of, 10, 12, 15 offspring, little ducklings, fluttering along behind them. And by the time they get to the sort of size that you might want to eat, she's maybe only got 2 or 3 left. So most of these offspring are going to die. So his other observation was that the numbers of organisms in a population, and obviously this doesn't apply to humans, remain constant. So effectively, if a mallard is going to live 10 years and produce 24 offspring a year, there will be 238 more mallards than there were when you started with at the end. And that doesn't happen. We're not awash in ducks. They're just not there. So, the conclusion that he drew from that is that most of these overproduced offspring, most of these offspring are going to die. And that's sad. And what he said was, well, which ones would die? Well, the ones that are not very good at surviving, and he called those the less fit. And the ones that would survive would be the most fit. Survival of the fittest. That's the fittest for that particular situation. So, the less fit individuals are going to die. Why are they going to die? They might succumb to a disease. They might be susceptible to a particular disease. They might get eaten. They might not be as good at getting food, so there's competition for food. And even should they manage to survive all these hazards in their environment, if they don't reproduce, then they're not passing on their alleles, and that makes them less fit. So they might fail to reproduce. For example, they might fail to attract a mate. They might not be the peacock with the most perfect tail. They might not find a mate. So the sort of reverse argument of that is the best adapted or fittest or ones with a selective advantage, and that's quite a good term to be using in an exam. Survive, that's their first hurdle, and more importantly, they reproduce and pass on their favourable alleles. Obviously, natural selection, it does work on alleles, but what it's really working on is phenotype, the appearance of an organism. So it's acting on phenotypic variation, which can be caused by mutation. So the idea, what he also noticed, was that all organisms vary. They're all unique. So even in a sort of, I don't know what you call them, a collection of ducklings, litter, I don't know. You know, what do you call a collection of ducklings? Dr. Savile's now looking also confused. We don't know. Brood? Yes, a brood of ducklings. When the mother duckling's got, duck has got, 10 of her offspring, some of them will be lighter than others, some of them will be darker than others, so they've got, big variation in coloration of the ducklings. And the ones that stick out like a sore thumb to a predator, they're the ones that are going to get eaten first. And so their alleles for either their very light coat or their very dark coat, it depends on what their surroundings are like, they're going to be the ones that are less fit. They're the ones that are going to succumb to the predators. The ones that, their immune system is just, slightly not working as well as somebody else's, they're going to succumb to disease. The ones that are not curious enough to paddle off after their mum the first time, they might compete less well for food. So, it's very small variants. So, without knowing anything about genetics, we now think that sort of change is down to mutation. Could, of course, be down to epigenetics as well now. We know a bit more about it. So, they pass on their favourable alleles. So what's going to happen to that allele frequency? Well, there's going to be more of these. So we say that over many generations, and here we tend not to talk about time, because for a fruit fly, many generations might be, 5 years, and for, an elephant, it's going to be lots. Can't do the maths. Lots of years. So over many generations, the allele frequency and the favourable alleles increases. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, hang on a minute. So, why haven't we got billions of really, the ducks are all a fairly, that are all a fairly uniform colour and can escape predators and are, got great immune systems and are fantastic at competing for food? Well, because in each generation, only the best ones will survive and pass on their alleles, and the less fit individuals, so there'll still be, out of the 24 ducklings, 22 that are not going to make it. I know, it's a sad topic. This means, obviously, if you've got favourable alleles increasing in the population over many generations. You might then also get phenotypic changes, which would lead to a new species being formed. So that's what he's saying, really. He was saying, okay, not everything survives. The ones that have a selective advantage, they'll survive. They'll go on to reproduce. Their alleles, even though he didn't know anything about genetics, will form the basis for the next generation. So that's sort of evolution in a nutshell.